All right, well, welcome everyone to the Just Transition Subcommittee meeting of the Vermont Climate Council. It's April 18th. Excited to have our evening meeting with everyone. This feels like an important meeting and moment since we have so many of our new subcommittee members joining us, many for the first time. So welcome everyone. We're going to make sure we create space and time in the agenda this evening to hear a little bit from each of you and have our established subcommittee members and supporting partners also do introductions. I will just note that one of my colleagues, Julia Shire from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, is also on. Julia and I have talked about her potential capability of engaging with the Just Transition Subcommittee from the Agency of Agriculture. So Julia was able to join this evening's meeting, which is wonderful. So I thought we would start by reviewing the agenda and the minutes, and then move into welcoming our new committee members. Looks like Sophie's doing a great job of putting resources in the chat. So you have the site where all the documents for the Just Transition Subcommittee live, as well as a link to today's resources, which should include today's agenda and our March meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone also received that by email. Please let me know if you didn't get an email from me that had meeting information about it. So the agenda for today would be accepting and reviewing the minutes from our March meeting, welcoming our new subcommittee members, receiving a little bit of a Climate Action Office update. Mona, sorry. Was there something that you want to offer? No, okay. Climate Action Office that would offer an update on the new to be developed climate action plan. We talked about this a little bit in March, but we'll use some time to talk about liaison roles and meeting schedules. We'll hold space for public comment at 5:15, and then kind of wrap up the evening talking about some co-chair kind of role and assistance needs and possible transition for Kelly and myself, as well as sort of like what's next and some upcoming meeting schedule. Any questions about the agenda or any other content that folks would like to see added this evening? Feeling good? Great. Thanks for the head nod, Sam, and the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Okay. And Carrie, thanks for taking notes. I really appreciate that. So let's take a look at the meeting minutes from our last meeting on March 21st. We do just sort of like an informal acceptance. But if there's any changes or edits that anyone wanted to suggest, let us know, please. We do usually take no comment as kind of acceptance of the minutes. Okay. Great. Glad that we're moving along. I think this next part of the agenda is sort of the fun part where we really get to create a little space to welcome our new subcommittee members. Again, I mentioned some of you attended the meeting in March and we got to do a little connecting, but we knew that that meeting didn't work for everyone. So we really kind of saved the formal and kind of like complete welcome to new members and introduction to established members for this evening's meeting. So we wanted to just take a few minutes to allow each of the new members and established members both to sort of share your name, kind of like your affiliation and or interest in the Just Transition Subcommittee. And then I would add maybe your favorite part of spring, since I believe we're officially in spring, at least at my home. And then one word of contribution or curiosity that you are excited about or have towards the Just Transition Subcommittee. I don't mind just going around the screen, but Paula, you just came off mute. Did you want to?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to ask to have that list in the chat because I
Yeah,
always forget something. Thank
no
you so much.
worries. Let me put it in there.
Thank you.
Yep. So I have it highlighted, so it just takes me a second to unhighlight and then I'll stick it in here. Okay. I'm happy to just go around the screen and maybe I'll start with myself and then I'll go to you, Sophie. But so I'm Abby Willard. I work at the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets in our Ag Development Division. I've been connected to the Just Transition Subcommittee since the beginning, established as a staff support and then moved into a co-chair role, I don't know, almost probably a year and a half ago, maybe longer, kind of lost track of time there. And I am loving the pear tree out my window is actually showing kind of new leaves and start of buds forming for flowers. And my one word of contribution or curiosity around the Just Transition Subcommittee, I didn't actually think about my own word, but would be opportunity. Sophie, do you mind going next? And then I'll go to you, Matthew, and then Sam.
Yeah, happy to. Hi, my name is Sophie Veltrap. I use she, her pronouns. I am with the Climate Action Office. So you've heard from me already in emails. I play a staff support role, so I'm not a sitting member, but I'm here to help with administrative things such as per diem and general questions. You can always reach out to me. And my favorite part of this part of spring is tree flowers. I am just obsessed with the tiny flowers on trees. I did not take this from a living tree. We had a limb down in our backyard and the red maple was flowering and I just had to bring it into my house. And I like to think that Vermont has 2 foliage seasons and we're about to get into the first one and I'm very excited for it. Abby, is it okay if I say like 3 words?
Sure, I'll allow 3. That sounds good. Just a paragraph, only because we just don't have time. Not that I wouldn't love to hear paragraphs from everyone.
Yeah, it's a little phrase. Yeah. I want to say gratitude for feedback as my, I guess, appreciation.
Thank you. Matthew.
Greetings, my name is Matthew LaFleur. I use him pronouns. My affiliation is too long. I'm not going to state my affiliation because I were to do that, I'm going to be here all day. Just say if I'm not in, certain parts of education and I'm in insurance, I'm not in insurance. Just say I'm a member of Vermont statewide, 12 plus, so like I said, I get very, very busy. If I'm not here, then I'm somewhere else across the state. Yes, for my what I want for what my favorite time of spring is warm weather. That's what I like. I notice, for myself, it's I tend to get cold more often than it should, but I like warm weather. I don't like the cold. It's too cold. But as for the question that you posted, for me it would be more of what brought me here today would be more of acceptance and sense of belonging, because we got to welcome others, that are that never had a chance, or are not involved in any discussions, to welcome them in and invite their feedback and suggestion recommendations, and a sense of belonging to why we do this job moving forward in the first place, is to make sure that we're equity and equality is included into the work moving forward for Vermont. And like I said, to having that, actually to be understand, but also being take note and also being notarized. Vermont's taking note that that we need to do better to service the individuals that live here, and not the ones that can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Sam, and then Callie and Danielle.
Hi all, I'm Sam Lashy Hers. I'm a climate and energy planner from Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. I don't know if I need to do this spiel, but there are 11 regional planning commissions in the state. Vermont is county structure, but not county government. The legislature established us to kind of fill a gap a little bit in terms of planning. So everybody has one. I cover Washington County and 3 towns in Orange. And let's see. Favorite part of the spring, I was struggling with so many things, but Matthew, you gave me a perfect idea, talking about community and bringing folks together and bringing people in. And so I'll say right now it's sugaring, just because we've had a lot of invites from folks around where I live in Heinsberg, and it's been really nice to get to know more people in the town. So I've really appreciated that. And one word, I'll keep it to intersectionality, I guess, what I'm looking for, what I'm constantly thinking about, I guess. And sometimes I can offer, and other times I just listen. So yeah, leave it there.
Thank you, Sam. Callie.
Yeah, hi, I'm Callie Fishburne. I am the energy planner at the Bennington County Regional Commission. So I appreciate Sam giving that sort of RPC spiel, because it saves me from having to do it. And I think she just explained it better than I have ever done when I have been asked to do it. I live in downtown Bennington. And I have to admit, I'm not really a huge fan of spring. It just causes me some serious hay fever, allergies, and I have allergies pretty much all spring into summer. And then, but I do like that there are more like events happening in the community, like outdoor events, and like opportunities to, meet people and be outside, even if I'm sneezing the entire time that I'm outside. And I think I'm kind of struggling with, I know you even said when I was going to be up, so it gave me some time to think, but I'm still kind of struggling on a word, because I feel like, yeah, it's hard to just like put it into one or 2 words. But I think I'll kind of go with what Sam had said about intersectionality, but also deep collaboration, I guess, is the other thing that comes to mind.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Callie. All right, Danielle, and then Carrie and Claire on deck.
My computer cut out. I'm next, right?
You are, yeah. We can hear you. Good.
Danielle Bombardier. I am a union electrician and a union teacher, and I am a representative for the labor community. I sit on the executive board for the Vermont State Labor Council. My favorite part of spring is gardening. I love gardening. And my one-word contribution would be solidarity. It's a strong union word, and it's representative of all of us working together toward this wonderful cause.
Thank you, Danielle.
Hi, I'm Carrie Hengstenberg. I work at the Department of Environmental Conservation. So I'm here in state government and have been providing staff support to this group for a while. We wouldn't really know how many years. We'd have to go back in our calendars. Anyway, at the DEC, I've been involved in some of our environmental justice work, and I'm kind of now more actively engaged in our civil rights compliance and language access. What I like about spring, what I think about is riding bicycles, because I've gotten all my bicycles out of the garage recently and ridden them all around. And I forget every year how much I like riding bikes until I get on my bike. And I'm like, this is so fun. And for this committee, I think the word I would use is, I don't know, perseverance, or strength. It's a lot to show up continuously to do this work when we're making progress, but it's incremental. So
I appreciate that, Carrie. Claire, and then it'll be Denise and Paula.
Thanks, Abby. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire McElveny. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Data and Equity Policy Manager at the Department of Public Service, so also in state government. I'm not a subcommittee member, but here to provide staff support like Carrie and Sophie, and have been attending this committee and providing support as needed. Well, yeah, from the beginning with I think Abby and Danielle since 2021 at some point. So happy to lend the historical perspective as is helpful as we start on another update. I feel like what I have been appreciating about spring is I live up in Morrisville, and we're just at the point where things are starting to like get green like that. You can never really, I feel like, put your finger on it, but there's this moment where like the greens just get so vibrant, and I feel like that's the moment when spring really begins, and I feel like I saw some of that this week, so that was nice. And I was also struggling with the word, but Danielle talking about gardening and me thinking about the green grass brought me to emergence. I'm curious to see what can emerge from this subcommittee with all our new membership as we kind of embark on this next update.
Thank you, Claire. Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise Bailey. I'm Director of Equity, Engagement, and Advocacy at Capstone Community Action. The Vermont Community Action Partnership has a seat on the council, so I'm representing all 5 of the community action partners in Vermont. So what am I loving about spring? It's warm enough in the morning to step outside without having to put on the heavy coat to admire our beautiful sunrises outside. That's a gift. That's a gift. And my one word contribution, so collaboration was used. So I'm going to go with engagement.
Thank you, Denise. Paula, and then it will be Anna, and then Mona.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Paula Melton. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Brattleboro. I am editorial director at a company here called Building Green, which is all about green building and resilience in the sort of built environment. I've been a member of the Vermont Climate Council for just over a year. I'm the representative for municipal governments. I've been on this subcommittee for less than a year. I am also a member of the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee. My favorite part of spring is the smell of dirt. And my one word hopeful contribution around this committee is service.
Thank you, Paula. Anna.
Hi. I'm Anna Gunther. I use she, her. I live in White River Junction. I think I am hitting like a year and a half on the committee, which feels wild because the monthly meetings make things feel very slow. I appreciate someone acknowledging incremental progress because I don't value that enough. I work at a nonprofit down here on the border called Vital Communities, and I have projects in climate and energy and transportation, a lot of e-bike focused programming. For spring, definitely gardening, but specifically hellebores. This is my first year that I have my own hellebore flowers, which I believe are the most romantic flower because they sort of droop downwards. And a word is practice.
Thank you, Anna. Mona, and then it will be Julie. I'll just give you a moment as a kind of like a member of the public, and then it will be Kelsey.
So my name is Mona Tolba, and I work for VDH, and I'm the Health Equity and the Community Engagement Coordinator. I am also here as a representative of the community. So I am originally from Egypt, and I represent, the Arabic community, but there is so many immigrant and refugee here in Vermont, and we keep getting more. So the word that I wanna, say here for this group is unity, because when the eclipse came, we all share the same sun and the same moon. I am not sure why we see difference. And
Thank
what I
you.
love about spring is tulip.
Do you have tulips already, Mona?
Not yet. I'm waiting for them.
Okay, they're coming.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Shire. I use she, her pronouns. Work with Abby at the Agency of Agriculture, and I'm really interested in some of those kind of statewide collaborations going on around equity and justice and all of its forms. So really happy to be sitting in. My favorite part of spring is being able to get up and go for a long walk before my workday starts, having it be light and not too freezing. I think my word is learning. Thanks.
Thanks, Julia. Kelsey, and then is it Alex? Is that how you let's make sure, Alex? Yes. And then Ed was with us, maybe just left, and hopefully he'll come back. But you're up. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I'm new to this group. I live in Heinsberg, pretty rural Heinsberg. I am a nurse at UVMMC. So yeah, last week we watched the amphibians cross the road. So that's my highlight of the beginning of spring. That was cool. They like the purple one. It looks like it should be in South America. Like it's such a cool color. And I'm like, we're in Vermont. And that was fun because you have to like go out when it's raining. So it's an experience. And a word that comes to mind is like openness. So the work that we do, we may have to encourage people to be open to looking at things differently, and not just accepting that we're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing them because we've been doing them that way. So keeping things open.
Thank you, Kelsey. Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Sierovic. I'm a sophomore at Woodstock Union High School, and I'm a part of the craft program. This is my first meeting with the Just Transitions Committee, and I'm really excited to be here. Favorite part of spring, I just saw ducks in my pond, and that was really cute. And I also just love the sun, being outside and playing sports. In one word contribution, I was thinking connection and balance.
I appreciate both those. And the ducks. Well, welcome all, and thank you so much for taking a few moments to go around our virtual room. And if Ed joins us again, we'll give Ed an opportunity to say hello and share a little bit about themselves. For the new subcommittee members, you've been engaged in hopefully one of the two different orientation sessions. Sophie is going to share a little bit at this next section about kind of this concept of kind of the possibility of pairing up and doing a buddy system. And I know you have some additional thoughts around that, Sophie. And then I would just offer that one of the pieces that I'll just preemptively put out there is that at our next meeting in May, we'd really like to dedicate that conversation in great part to kind of becoming more familiar with the guiding principles and the scoring rubric that this Just Transition Subcommittee developed, quite some time ago. And so that will be, we'll share more information. You have the link in the resource in this agenda with a little bit of a heads up that we'd like you to, become familiar with it, take a chance to read through it if you haven't already in advance of the May meeting. And we'll talk about it a little bit later in the agenda in more detail as we plan for upcoming meeting schedule. But Sophie, yeah, tell us your thoughts on the buddy system and other onboarding pieces.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody who came to the onboarding session. I owe everybody who was at this week's session an email, so you'll get that soon. So we're setting up what I'm just gonna refer to as a buddy system for youth members, and it occurred to me that that might be helpful for everybody. So I just wanted to gauge folks' interest, and I can facilitate pairing people up. The idea of which would be if you are a new member and would like to kind of have a point person to contact for like extra context, extra questions, that we can pair folks up. And if you are a member who has been here for the past year or longer and would like to be a buddy or point person for a new member, then we can make that happen. So that's kind of the general concept of it. I think all we need to do at this meeting is if you would use the raise hand function. You could also post in the chat if that's easier to indicate if this is something that you'd be interested in. I can also pause for questions. I know I didn't give a whole lot of information, so if you have any questions, happy to discuss.
I see Matthew's
Okay,
hand. And Kelsey.
Yes, Matthew, I do have a question. Me is particular because I'm sit on 11 subcommittees across the state, do have to involve equity. I'm basically the hot pick of, everybody's, grocery list, as you call it. Where does my role fit in that? Where does my role fit into this, knowing that I have a broad, scope of things within Vermont systems? Yeah, I am neurodivergent, just letting people know. I have autism, but my mind works differently and I see the world through a different lens, big time. That's the reason why 11 plus subcommittees want me badly, because they see someone like myself that understands the nature of what should we doing, not just with inclusivity, what should we doing together as a society. And just to let people know, I know if I'm on, like I said, I don't mind working, with anyone. It's just, I don't want this to become, first pick, first serve type of stuff, because, I'm literally serving on 11, including this one, 12 across the state. So like I said, I have a very vast majority of information to share. It's just, I don't want to leave people out. And just to give you a heads up. So when you do the buddy system, it has to be, for me, I have to interconnect with everyone because I'm already working across the state with everyone. So me, I would consider myself just information or rarity. I can work with just about anyone, but I'm already in these systems. So just giving you guys a heads up that if you pick me, you'll know who you're getting, that's already doing this work across the state. So like I said, I can work with just anyone. It just, I don't want this to be into like, hey, this is no fair. You picked him, because he has all these experience. Like I said, I can, as you may know, 12, this is my 12th committee, as you may know it. So yeah, I work across Vermont statewide on stuff that's hard. Basically complex or technicality or legislative or education, which those are the four main reasons the Vermont picked me, not to go on very quickly, to task with to make that plain language accessibility, because those are the problems we have that I see across the state. And that's the reason why we have problems across the state is nobody gets it if you can't plain language it. And that's the reason why I'm tasked on doing that type of work across the state seriously. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say in response to that, Abby?
No, I was just going to offer that I think the buddy system concept makes sense, and there's some chats from Anna and Claire as sort of like more long-standing committee members also offering for the mutually beneficial value of being engaged as a buddy. And I think it could just be nice to have someone that you connect with outside of meetings or on a more one-on-one level. But I agree, Matthew, I think every member of this subcommittee has kind of a larger audience and background and knowledge base to bring to the group. And I suspect that that's where our altogether meeting time will be spent, is some of that sharing. So I think the buddy idea is a wonderful way to just connect and make sure that we have a more thorough onboarding for new members to feel they can ask questions about history or share with established members ideas and expectations that they have in a smaller setting where you can be a little bit more engaged and intimate. So I hope many express an interest.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that framing of the expertise flows in both directions, right? This isn't just sort of like new plus existing members. We all have something to learn from each other, and yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think that that's the goal, and
great.
And I think, okay, so I've got some folks chiming in the chat for interest, so I'll note that all down, and I will pair you all up over email, and hopefully this can foster more direct and deeper relationships amongst us all, because I know sometimes in this big meetings it can be hard to feel that like get to know people one-on-one. So I will be in touch with follow-up on that.
Great. Thank you for suggesting it, Sophie. I know we're over time, but I just want to create just a moment. Are there any remaining questions that new subcommittee members have regarding onboarding at this point? And I'll also check in at the end of the meeting and see if there's new questions that may have arisen, or maybe even questions that you're having that we answer by the end of today's discussion before we move on to the climate action plan update. People feeling kind of like appropriately informed for meeting number 1 or meeting 1.5. Yeah. Sam.
Actually, sorry, I had a really quick question. I was thinking about this earlier. Are there hard copies of the plan and the report? Because I definitely, I mean, I could print it out at work, but I'm not sure if everyone has access to color printing, but it would be really great if there is like to get that the report of the progress report and the actual plan itself. I just find it way easier to read in print. So I don't know if we can request there if that exists, or I can print it out, or anyone who needs it, I can, within reason, do a few copies, but that'd be great.
Thanks for saying that, Sam. Yes, I can offer that service, and that was not top of mind for me, so I'm so glad you brought that up. So if anybody would like a print copy, let me know. If you I think especially for that action status update, the color is helpful. The climate action plan as a whole is 200 something pages. I know Denise has had the experience of receiving that packet in the mail. I think I had to mail it in like 2 different packets. So just be prepared for that. I'm very happy to send print copies of those things. So let me know if you want that.
Great. Sophie is such a resource for us as a member of the Climate Action Office, and a lot on your plate, Sophie, but I think over time, as people decide what resources would be helpful for you to have in kind of print copy, we can make sure that we can get them to you. Okay, Sophie, do you want to just sort of give us an update on the Climate Action Plan from the Climate Action Office?
Yes. Okay.
Share the guidance with people in advance of today, but I think you're going to walk us through.
Will do. So, and Mona, I see your message in the chat. I will get you one as well. So the big project that's coming up this year is the update to the Climate Action Plan. So you've learned in onboarding that the Climate Action Plan was adopted in 2021, and it's required to be updated at certain intervals. This next update will be due on July 1st, 2025. So we're right in that moment of let's Oh, yeah. So let's get into that. So we'll be gearing up to do all that. We'll be talking about liaison systems today, and Paula is going to start us off by walking us through this guidance document that talks about how the subcommittees are going to be engaged, which I know was a question last meeting of, okay, can we talk about like what we're going to be doing here? So I think this guidance document that Paula is going to help walk us through really lays out the structure of what's coming up in the next year. There's certainly other things that this subcommittee might choose to take on or do outside of the climate action plan, but this is really kind of going to be the front and center. So I'll pass it over to Paula, and Paula, let me know if you want me to share my screen or if you want to share.
I can share. Let me just, I'll start sharing now.
And let us know in the chat if anyone is has not seen the document and would like it sent to them, or I can pop it in the chat as well.
Yeah, and I can just show you what the document looks like. But I sort of made some slides to kind of like pull out the key stuff. But yeah, so basically this is what the document looks like. It talks about level of effort. It talks about the roles of the different subcommittees. And then like the role of the Climate Action Office and the timeline. So, but I just wanted to like, I don't know, I sort of wanted to kind of like make sure we're all like do a level set and sort of pull out that information into something a little more visual. So this is, this is what our process is going to be and what the role of our subcommittee is. So just to get some like acronyms and stuff out of the way. So I don't know, like maybe this is super boring for people, but the whole basis of our existence is the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is, the climate law that created the Vermont Climate Council. It was enacted in September of 2020, and it required the council to produce a climate action plan just over a year later, which was a big scramble. And, we'll get into that in a second. So the Vermont Climate Council, sometimes abbreviated VCC, has 23 seats. 2/3 of us are appointed by the legislature, a third are appointed by the administration. Just Transition Subcommittee is us, JTSC. There are 5 subcommittees altogether, and we are kind of like in a supporting role. So we're not going to be drafting the next climate action plan directly. So I'll explain that in a second. The other subcommittee that's in like more of a supportive role is Science and Data. And then the climate action plan itself. So it's often referred to in meetings as the CAP or the initial CAP, which is the thing that we're updating. It came out on December 31st of 2021, and it's due for an update. So it's supposed to be updated every 4 years. And that means we have to have it completely done by July 1st of next year. That might sound like a long time, but when you're working in committees and especially doing community engagement, you need to build in a lot of time for deliberation and to ensure justice and equity. So this is what the initial CAP looked like. This is the cover of it. They drafted it in less than a year. A lot of people were really overworked and burned out. And there was less community engagement than even like the law itself wanted us to have. I will say I'm not the best person to talk about that history because I was not on the Climate Council until last year, which is a couple of years after the initial CAP was written. But yeah, there were limits on the amount of community engagement that they even just had literally enough hours in a day to do. And so there was, some pushback from the community, from within the council, from the subcommittees. Like it was a pretty rough time because there was this legislative obligation to produce a document at a particular time, and it was very short timeline. So with this update, which is again, like required by the legislation, so we have a deadline that is not negotiable. They're going to try to correct some of those problems. So there's a longer lead time. We're doing a lot more planning. We're doing a lot more community engagement. And there's a more intentional and comprehensive equity focus. Although I will say that I think one of the duties of this committee that's like not officially written down anywhere is to ensure that, you know, we're holding that intentionality and comprehensiveness as like, you know, the people pushing it. We're the ones who are supposed to be representing our diverse community. So this is basically the overview of the guidance, which I just showed you. It tells you the expected level of effort, the major milestones in the process, and then the areas of focus. So the people who are going to be actually doing the writing are these three subcommittees. Cross-sector mitigation, which is focused on mostly on emission targets, which are part of the legislation. Like we have particular targets we have to meet by 2025, 2030, and then, you know, beyond as a state, like the entire state economy. Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee is about climate readiness, mostly in terms of infrastructure, transportation, built environment kind of places. Agriculture and Ecosystems Subcommittee is kind of a combination of, you know, like mitigation, which would be, you know, reducing emissions, storing carbon, that kind of stuff. And then also climate readiness in terms of our natural and managed lands, as opposed to like, you know, roads and bridges and buildings. So then the supporting roles, as I was talking about, are done by science and data and by us, Just Transitions. So science and data gives, as it sounds like, scientific guidance. And we are giving JEDI guidance, basically, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. And the hope is to be ensuring, you know, setting the other subcommittees up for success in this realm. By ensuring we're intervening like in an ongoing way as representatives of our diverse community in an inclusive and just like open-hearted, open-minded way. So here are our specific responsibilities as people, as the other subcommittees are kind of doing their drafting and writing and stuff like that. So we participate as liaison members of other subcommittees. So I think probably I'm probably the main one on the Rural Resilience and Adaptation. I'm also on that subcommittee. I wasn't like put there as a liaison, but I'll be fulfilling that role as well as I can. And then there are, you know, the other three subcommittees that are drafting. And I don't know, do we have a question I have that we can talk about later is whether there's also a liaison on science and data. We also will be assisting the other subcommittees in using the Just Transitions principles and the scoring rubric, which is something we're going to be looking at in depth at the next meeting. We're going to be encouraging people from out in the community who there's a sort of ongoing public engagement work that I'm going to talk about in a second. We're going to be kind of like encouraging people who are giving feedback to like, could you come to a meeting? Could you share your lived experience to the Climate Council, to, you know, the subcommittees, just to help people comprehend and contextualize sort of like, you know, it's easy to get kind of caught up, especially in like the emission targets and like the legal requirements to like reduce our emissions. So like it's really appreciated in my experience on the council and on other subcommittees that people are able to come and speak so that everybody can kind of take a step back and say, right, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're here. We're here to transition to a decarbonized and resilient place for our communities, all of them, to live and thrive. So that's like a constant kind of like grounding in reality that needs to happen over and over to help us stay focused. And then we also, you know, we're not just only going to be asking other people to speak. We also have a role to kind of say, well, the public engagement team found this outcome or learned this lesson, and that's something we'll be bringing to the subcommittees as they're drafting and prioritizing. So In terms of the public engagement work, that's what I was just talking about. So the Climate Action Office is kind of like overseeing this public engagement team, who is a consultant. So it's, you know, paid professionals out there engaging with the community. And I believe that some of those events are places where subcommittee members on this committee and others were kind of like recruited, basically. So I think it's, you know, even if that were the only thing that happened, like that would be some success from doing that public engagement. But a lot of other stuff is going on. There are going to be more and more events. There will be more public engagement after the first draft, because there's a public comment draft coming out after that. So we do have the option as subcommittee members, and all of the, you know, council and subcommittee members have this option to attend public engagement events if we're needed there, or if we personally just have a particular interest in that event and the capacity to go and hear, you know, feedback from the public whom we serve. And then whether we're physically ourselves at those events or not, part of our job in giving feedback to all the other subcommittees is to share outcomes, share lessons learned, share lived experience that we and our public engagement team have heard in the field about how this, our work is going to impact other folks. So, and then here's the timeline. So right now what's happening is that the subcommittees are developing their work plans for CAP updates. And we don't really like exactly have a work plan because we're not doing direct drafting except as members of other subcommittees. So the JTSC, the Just Transition Subcommittee, is not drafting anything specific for the CAP. Where we're going to come in and be really key is these places that I've highlighted here. So from May to August, there's kind of like this exploratory and like first drafting phase that the subcommittees are going to be going through, where they're looking at those, the progress report that's based on the last CAP, the initial CAP, and saying, okay, nothing's happening here. So that would be like finding lack of progress, but then there might also be gaps. Like one that I think people have already started talking about is equity in food systems, resilient food systems. So I think that might be a gap that ag and ecosystems, for example, might, and also rural resilience might take up as like a something that needs to be addressed that maybe was a gap in the initial plan. We also have a big role in terms of like once they, you know, basically they're going to brainstorm, get a big list and start drafting things, but then at some point they have to say, okay, we need to narrow this down. And I feel like our subcommittee has a big role to play in ensuring that the way things get prioritized is just equitable and inclusive. And then it kind of, the subcommittees are gonna finalize their recommendations, and they'll go basically to the Climate Action Office to kind of like consolidate and finalize the public comment draft. And then as that public comment draft kind of like goes out to the public and gets socialized around in different communities, the public engagement process will ramp up in different ways. And we have a big role to play in supporting that process. So, and probably, I did not highlight the reviewing stakeholder feedback, but I think that also is going to be a big part of our job, is like helping, again, to like sort of sort, prioritize, make sure that the outcomes of this process are just equitable and inclusive. So I think I have questions of my own just because of being kind of new myself, but yeah, I think this is a point where we can chat.
Thank you so much, Paula. I feel like I just learned a lot myself. I feel like I gained a lot of clarity in your remarks and kind of walking through that document. So thank you so much.
I thought that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a little time for questions built into the agenda. Wondering if collectively the group can answer them if there are some areas.
I have a question first.
Yeah.
That was a really good presentation, Paula. High level and helpful. In the spirit of this committee sharing lessons learned, it seems like what was presented in the timeline, and specifically like the public engagement happening over 3 months after the plan is already developed, is sort of an area that has been pointed out, I think, to the Climate Council. I know it's been brought to the attention of DEC many times that bringing the final product when it's already done is not really in the spirit of meaningful engagement. But I also know things are a little different now because the contractor that you've been working with, Sophie, the contract team has been doing some ongoing outreach to communities. So maybe it's just not captured in there. I'm not sure how the public is informing this, given what was presented.
Can I say something? Thank you.
Please,
Thank
Mona.
Thank you. No, the public actually, not all of them, because I don't know all the public, but at least for my community, all the questions it was asked actually during this community engagement, you already put the report, you already put the laws, you already put the rules. So what is the benefit of asking us now? Was one question that was raised, and the real community engagement that's happened when it informed actually the decision making, not after the decision has been made, or the rules has already been set. But this is with everybody saying, what, it's just like, it's a check mark, oh, we did community engagement, we already reached it to this kind of people. But then what are you going to do with what you're going to hear from the community? Can you really change what has already been decided upon? This is it's a question mark around this one.
Mona, can I just ask a quick follow-up question before maybe Sophie responds? I want to know from your perspective if the ordering of, the public engagement process happening after the prioritized and finalized recommendations is the greatest concern, or if there's another kind of component to this that you might recommend be reconsidered.
No, all the rules and all the climate action plan is already put in place. Yes, what it needs to be done is already decided. There is no any going back to change any of these rules. They already decided by 2035 we're gonna be replacing all the regular car by electric car. This is as my memory remember. Maybe like so many rules has already been put for this action plan. But then we did not inform any of this. Like people we keep saying this electric car is not going to benefit us. Please find some other ways. And then nobody's listening. I actually, before even I joined this group, I collected some letters from my community because we are not high income people. We cannot afford electric car. But this is what you put in your plan. By 2035, all these cars, we will not be able to, if we need to buy a new car, it has to be electric, like all the cars should be replaced by electric car. And yes, it is good for the environment. I agree. But if I cannot even afford to feed my kids, how am I gonna buy actually electric car? If I cannot afford to, to live in a good house, how am I gonna support like an electric, like this station to put electric cars that need 7 hours or 8 hours to to charge? It's just not practical for us, and I don't know what is the solution for that after this.
Yes, thank you, Mona. And so I just want to reiterate, and then I want to turn to Paula and Kelsey that have their hand raised, that I think what I'm hearing from you, or at least what I took away from what you shared, was that it's not just the gaps or the areas that may be lacking in progress, but actual whether there were strategies and recommendations within the original plan that there may not be actual agreement around. And is that up for discussion and redrafting? Or is it really just checking in on the progress that we've made from the original? So I don't know, Paula, Kelsey, love to hear from both of you.
Yeah, so my sense of things is like what we can't change, like we can't re-legislate the Global Warming Solutions Act. But that's not what we're being asked to do. The Global Warming Solutions Act has some pretty broad parameters about decarbonization and resilience. So our job is to ensure that the transition, that's why it's just transition, the transition to decarbonization and a better adapted environment is implemented in a just and equitable way. And so like what you're bringing up, like, I mean, so the first thing is like, yes, there's a public comment draft, but the whole point of our liaison work and our sort of like being the conduit from current ongoing public engagement into the subcommittees is to ensure that that implementation is taking those people out in the world in all these different diverse communities, different incomes, different, rural, there, we have farmers, we have construction workers, like all these people, forestry people, make sure that we are caring for those people while we make a necessary transition away from fossil fuels. And so like moving away from fossil fuels is not negotiable. We have to do that. We don't have to do it with electric cars. Like there's transit, there's all these other things, infrastructure. And like, if you look at the initial climate action plan, it's not all about electric cars. It's got transit, it's got infrastructure changes, it's got many solutions. Our job as this subcommittee and as a broader like climate council is to ensure that those solutions, the implementation of that transition is just and equitable. And so that's basically why we're here. That's our job. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. So that's just the way I see it. Like there's not like a formal like public engagement period before the writing, but it is already started. It is ongoing and it is going to continue through drafting, through prioritization, through finalizing, and through the public comment period.
Kelsey, you had your hand up earlier and I know it's like you're out walking. Do you want to offer a comment? Question? I'm not able to hear you though.
Oh yeah, we can.
Okay, how about now?
Now we can, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So thank you, Mona and Paula. That was great, and I'm getting super jazzed about being part of this group. My question is, when we're revising this, well, I know our group isn't, but as it's being revised, like how, looking back in the past couple of years, how much do you think actually is going to be changed? Or is it just going to be like minor revisions?
Great question, Kelsey. And I don't know, Sophie, if you have a sense of, I guess, both Kelsey's question of like how big of the changes might be, and even specifically to Mona's of like, if there's a recommendation that people are not feeling there is a just process and transition possible, are we able to make changes in the new plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't answer that question about like the extent of how much it's going to change. I think that's going to play out and it's going to depend on the subcommittee. And I would hope that recommendations that are in the climate action plan, because we are in this update phase, can be revised based on the feedback and the input and the liaison structure of the Just Transition Subcommittee. That's the goal, is that in this revision process, by having liaisons from Just Transition Subcommittee and by our work to bring voices of impacted frontline communities who are going to acutely feel the effects of climate change to those meetings and to those subcommittees, that those are influencing the revision process. So I, as in my role, I can't promise you that, you know, every action will end up being as just at the outcome. But what I can promise is that I will support the structures being in place. That relationship and that conversation and that feedback is happening. That's the goal. Is that helpful? Does that help answer the question? I know it's nothing definite, but that's what we're going for.
Yeah, no pressure, subcommittee, but we got this. That was helpful, Sophie.
Great. And I wanted to chime in with some extra context about the engagement, which will be new for you all because we are still right, as Paula says, like, yes, that's our job, and yeah. So we're gonna, part of my role as not just staff support for just transitions, but my job at the Climate Action Office is community engagement and communications coordinator. So as Paula mentioned, I work with our community engagement contractors. We are hoping to have a presentation to you all. I know folks who have been on the subcommittee already have seen a presentation from Kashka, and I think it was back in November, to kind of let you all know what they're up to. So part of my role is to like facilitate that connection between you all and the work that they're doing. And we're going to put together, we've got kind of like the broad outline, but how we're supporting engagement in this plan update, so that that engagement is happening from the beginning and not just at the end where that public comment draft is. So right now, broadly, what that's looking like is having some kickoff events in June to announce to the public, hey, this update and revision is going to happen, and encourage, like, letting folks know that the way to participate is through these public meetings of the subcommittees. In addition, we're going to be infusing like awareness of the CAP update in the ongoing community engagement work that the cause are up to. And we will share that engagement plan with you. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you have ideas like right now about it, I would love to hear. So basically, big picture is we want to have this kickoff in June that helps people know this is happening and how they can access and be a part of the process.
Thanks, Sophie. Claire, and then Matthew had your hand up again as well.
Thanks. Well, I was just thinking, I know that's really helpful context, Sophie, and I know there will be, through the CBI contract and the work at the Climate Office, like some intentional engagement specific to the CAP, but I wonder if there's also work that we could do to identify and review engagement efforts, not specific to the CAP, but specific to the content of what will be considered in the CAP, because I know other agencies are doing engagement work on specific projects. There's probably other non-state agency organizations, some of which may be represented here, that are doing engagement, and it feels like this perpetual question of like, how can we collaborate so we're not overburdening? And like, I know the Agency of Ag just did a series of listening sessions. I know we at the department just did a bunch of engagement work. I know there are others out there who I am sure are doing similar efforts, and it feels like bringing some of that into this process to make sure that those efforts are considered would probably be something of value.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Claire. I do think there are some models of how to create space for the public to share feedback that can be early in a process as opposed to reactionary, or it may be in addition to reacting to recommendations and offering suggestions. So yeah, kind of the concept of some at the beginning of the process and some opportunity in reflection on the recommendations as drafted might be a nice recommendation back to the council. Matthew, your hand's down, but I know it had been up earlier. Is there a comment you want to
Yes, it was. And just to be quick on Sophia's question, it's similar to the regional planning commissions across the state. That was her question. Basically, they bring it to the board. They have to do some tweaks to it. They have to accept and approve what's being laid out. Then, because I noticed this, because I attended yesterday night's regional planning about this discussion, and we had the same conversation. Thank you for Sophia for bringing this up. Basically, they have to revision it, then they have to accept it as amended, and then they can come back and basically put the new plan in place. Like what we're doing yesterday is revisioning the old plan, putting it in place. Then we have to come back and do it all over again, but then update it with the new plan. That's basically what it comes down to, is basically a double take on, we have what we have in place, but then we got to pass that through. Then we can come back and have the board revisit the new plan, and then that goes through, gets accepted, and instead of two plans, it becomes integrated into one. So that's exactly what, for that, what it says in there. As for, the planning phases, for engagement, to reach out, to me, it's like, we got most of this information in the agencies. Are we doing anything outside the agencies, because I agree with Mona's concerns, but most of it's been done behind doors usually, and, and not in front of the public eye. And some of it, unfortunately, is legislative, and we can't control that. But is there a way we can keep the engagement, for both parties instead of trying to eliminate certain parties? Because in my engagement across the state of Vermont, I'm seeing some parties already have an advantage over others, and that's not exactly the way we want to run our committees, because then we are going against what we were saying we're going to do. It's just, if we're going to invite the participation, first of all, we need to outreach to the ones we have not yet outreach to. To the non-state agencies. You're talking communities that are not part of, they're still part of Vermont, but not agency led, which is, which I see a big problem across, Vermont as a whole. Believe me, I'm working across Vermont, and I see this big gap of who's sitting at a table and who does not sit at a table, who makes the rules and who does not make the rules, or hey, I'm a legislator, I do things this way. This is the state of Vermont, we do these things this way. And that's a big problem, because the way we look at it is it's causing a lot of problems, actually, because there's not much engagement. It's like, how can we get participants? There's a big question of the state, is, which I'm involved with. Big question of the state is, how can we get outreach participation to be included into our work when that's not happening? Which to Mona, quite a concern is, it's already being set, and she's right, it's already being set before that public comment period's begun. It's like, because it's legislative. So think who's in control of all that work before it gets out to us, It's already set in stone. So it's like, we do a specific way, Vermont sees it, does it this specific way. They're just basically want your feedback and public opinion on it, but it's already set in stone. And that's exactly what she was trying to say. Is like, ain't worth my public comment, or ain't worth me putting any participate. It was already set in stone, and that's the outreach. Who is literally, the big question is, who is really literally missing from the table here of these discussion and conversations, but also how can we participate more of, if we're being either are being ignored, or it's just, there's, like you said, overturned burnout, or just, the scheduling flexibility is not, how things go in the state. It's either we set a set schedule of flexibility that to meet our needs, but not your needs. And that's the grind that I'm seeing across the state. is, oh, you said it one way, but you haven't been very accommodating our way too as well. So there's literally you taking that participation out of the equation because you said it a certain way, and you're doing a certain way that we always have been using ever since. And there's really no chance of how to put, no chance to participate if it's set up that way or currently using it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And there's some agreement with your sentiment in the chat. So I want to make sure we get to the chat. We're a minute before the created space we wanted to provide for public comment. And Callie, I see that you have your hand raised. So I might go to your question and then we may take a break just to make sure that there's no public comment, or make space for public comment if there is, and then come back to your question. But yeah, go ahead, Callie.
Yeah, sorry, I'll try to be brief because I know we're probably a bit behind on the agenda. And also this is my very first meeting, so I don't have a lot of familiarity with the work that the public engagement consultants are doing. So maybe they're thinking about incorporating what I'm about to say, but basically my concern about on top of everyone else's concerns that have been raised, which I completely agree with, my concern is if our public engagement essentially boils down to encouraging people to come to climate council and subcommittee meetings. I'm hoping it's not just going to be limited to that. But I had noted in the guidance document that we were supposed to read before this meeting that one of our roles was to incorporate and bring in lived experience by encouraging people to come and share that at, climate council and subcommittee meetings. And I just, want to put out there that I don't think any public engagement that we're doing should be limited to just that, because I know that that's just not going to work for a lot of people. Like, we're trying to do more creative public engagement at the regional planning commissions and working with our towns to help them do more creative public engagement. And public meetings just don't work for a lot of people, not just because of logistics of time or, maybe not having childcare or transportation, but also just the feeling of feeling whether you belong there or even feeling comfortable being in that environment. So, I really kind of want to see, just on the whole, moving away from just the public meeting structure. I don't think public meetings are ever going to go away, or at least anytime soon, but I feel like we shouldn't be treating those as all right, we've got the meeting open to the public, so great, let's get people to come to this meeting, because there's just a lot of people that are not going to want to do it regardless. So, and again, maybe the consultants are already putting that into place. I don't know what they're working on. So
I really appreciate that suggestion, Callie. And I want to maybe ask you, Sophie, to respond to that in a moment, but I do want to just take a pause. So it's 5:16. If there's any members of the public that would like to offer comment during this time. I think, Julia, you're the only member that's not officially of the subcommittee support team, so that's not pressure that you need to make comment at all, but I just wanted to make sure we're holding space as we intend, if there were any comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional members join or questions, comments. Sophie, yeah, do you just want to briefly respond to Callie's points around maybe what the CBI public engagement team is working on, and then we'll just do a quick agenda time check.
Sure thing. So I'll share a whole lot more information and follow-up emails. And as I mentioned, we'll invite the contractors here to present to you all and further grow that relationship between you all. And the contractors' sort of umbrella name is Consensus Building Institute. And we've got 3 folks here located in Chittenden County. Their names are Indra Acharya, Kashka Orlo, and N. Nelson Stoner. Kashka and Indra were on the Just Transition Subcommittee, and their work I feel like what you spoke to, Callie, is like exactly kind of the sentiment that their work kind of grew out of like, we can't just check the box with public meetings. We have to be showing up where people are, and we have to be inviting people to the tables that exist, but we also have to be showing up at other people's tables and asking, you know, would you like to have a conversation about this? And there are a couple ways that our consultants are doing that, showing up at community-based events that are happening. So far, it's mostly been in Chittenden County and Washington County. So a big effort this year is to expand that statewide. And we're excited this year that there will be this really specific tie to the climate action plan that our consultants will be able to bring to those conversations. Another bucket is having conversations with community-based organizations and starting to grow some relationships there. So we'll do a whole overview of like what exactly is happening in that ongoing community engagement front. And then the reverse side of that is we're still going to be having these public meetings. And so to your point, Matthew, before, of like, how do we change, what kinds of like, how do we make the system different? Like we're doing that on the ground, showing up where people are at community engagement, but what kind of changes can we also make to these public meetings that are still going to be happening to make them more welcoming and also make changes there? So let's do both. And I feel like even over the past 2 weeks, I've received some really helpful feedback that has like reminded me to do both, and I've been really appreciative of those who have spoken up to share that with me. Yeah, so I hope that helps, and I promise that more information will come, and I really appreciate like the way that Matthew, you two just like spoke to those things and captured them in your words. So I won't take up too much more time because I know we've got some other things on the agenda, and I will be following up with a couple of items that share a little bit more in detail so that you'll have more to look at in between now and our next meeting about it.
Yeah, thank you. So just a few follow-ups to that one. It's likely the June meeting that we would invite the public engagement consultants from Consensus Building Institute to join our meeting and offer an update and share. They also do quarterly, I believe it is, progress reports of kind of their public engagement activities that Sophie will share with us as they become available. I think the next quarterly report's coming, is it in April or May, Sophie? I can't remember now.
Yeah, this month. I had hoped to have it
April.
by
Okay.
now, but hopefully next week.
Yeah, so we'll have, more information that this subcommittee will have access to about their activities. Paula mentioned in the chat, there's quite a bit in the chat that I just want to quickly run through. Paula mentioned in the chat that the Vermont Climate Council has created space on the agenda for like just transition kind of perspective, lived experience, and Mona, as a representative of both herself and her community and from the just transition perspective, shared at the last Climate Council meeting. And that's a really powerful opportunity that we all have to either bring lived experience of our own or shared perspective that we're aware of. There were two other suggestions. I don't know if everyone is following the chat, but Paula asked if there was any desire of sort of creating some sort of like a little working group that would want to specifically put together some recommendations for the steering committee on how they could really engage more equitably community perspective. And there was interest from a few folks, so Claire, Sam, Carrie, and Sophie. So if others are also interested, I think that looks like it's a group that's starting to coalesce. And then some other suggestions that that Carrie provided around, how comments from the original plan could be provided, and Sophie made note of that as well. Anything else that's in the chat that I have missed that makes sense to elevate right now before we change topic? and probably most people are able to follow along in the chat as well. Okay, I think that like the public engagement conversation is so important, and it's like a real critical kind of foundation of this subcommittee, and it's where I think many of us can get really fired up and feels really important, especially as we're talking about how do we collect feedback and what is the plan for updating the plan, and do we feel like it's being structured appropriately. So I think these are all the right conversations and questions for us to be having, and it's really figuring out then how we have influence. So whether it's through the Climate Council itself, whether it's recommendations to the steering committee, whether it's attending the meetings, whether it's bringing lived perspective and lived experience and community perspective in other ways as liaisons, all of those are these different strategies that we're trying to put in place for us to be able to have influence and impact. Which I think then leads us to this item that we can be relatively brief on, because we're sort of running into kind of our out of time in the agenda, which is this subcommittee is famous for. But in the agenda packet, you did all receive a document that Sophie prepared, which I can also do a screen share of if that's helpful, of subcommittee description, because what we really wanted to talk about at this meeting was this opportunity to function as a liaison. So acknowledging that, maybe I should back up a moment. Our hope is that we may be able to make some changes to our Just Transition subcommittee meeting schedule for the summer to allow for subcommittee members to both get some background around the guiding principles, meet with the public engagement folks, and then in July and August, not have a monthly Just Transition subcommittee meeting, and instead really focus on that liaison role opportunity of attending other subcommittee meetings and sort of being that infiltrated voice around just transition strategies as they are, as the other subcommittees are determining those gaps, talking about areas where there's lack of progress, and maybe even reevaluating some of the recommendations that were included in the original plan. So for us to be able to talk about the liaison roles and who's playing what, though we do have some subcommittee members that are already in that capacity, we wanted to quickly do a review of the 4 subcommittees outside of Just Transition subcommittee. So everyone was sort of aware of the structure and their function. As Sophie is kind of reviewing this with us, keep in mind that our thought or proposal, at least to you, is whether 2 liaisons from this subcommittee could be kind of formally assigned to attend other subcommittee meetings in earnest during this spring-summer time period when the subcommittees are reconvening and starting to look at drafting and evaluating the new updated plan, knowing that we would not have Just Transition meetings in July and August, but we would meet in May and June, again, as part of just like our context setting and convening as a group to make sure we're kind of coalescing, since we have so much newness on our committee at the moment. So keep in mind as we go through these, if there's any of these subcommittees that you feel particularly attached to or committed to or have kind of passion around the issues that they are addressing. So would it be helpful if I did a screen share, Sophie, of and for the others committee members? I will no longer be able to see the agenda to keep time, but that's all right. We'll maybe try to keep this to like quick 5 minutes if we can.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, and if you'd be able to screen share so that folks can see the subcommittees that we're talking about. If folks saw, and no worries if you didn't, I sent out an email a little earlier today, and I know it was very last minute. In addition to these 5 subcommittees, what's not on here is that there will be a tech advisory committee about this, what's called a cap and invest study. So that's looking at an economic mechanism to basically charge certain things that are emitting greenhouse gases, and then that money towards climate solutions. There's a lot of equity considerations in that economic mechanism. And so that's another place where a just transitions liaison would be really key. It will really, the cap and invest will really be the primary policy recommendation associated with this revision of the climate action plan is what's looking likely. So it's not an official body of the council. This is sort of out of Vermont transportation, VTrans, which means, and there's an important consideration that the Cap and Invest Technical Advisory Committee is not eligible for any per diem. So I wanted to make sure to note that. And it's a short timeline. The time commitment of that particular entity is 6 total meetings plus 2 presentations between now and next winter. And those meetings are maximum 2 hours. So total of 8. So I wanted to name that. I'm sorry it doesn't have a visual on here. That was kind of the last minute addition. And then on here we've got the 5 subcommittees. So that means there's 4 that we need liaisons to. And we were thinking that having 2 liaisons would be sustainable. That way, if one person can't make a meeting, that's okay because there's another person. Also, that way it's not falling on just one person's shoulders. And there's more solidarity and collaboration there. So I think unless anybody has any questions, which we can address, I can take down folks' interest in being liaisons. As Abby mentioned, will kind of like reduce the proportionality of the Just Transitions meetings so that if you're a liaison, it's not an overwhelming amount of meetings that you're attending. Okay, I see a hand from Matthew.
And maybe before Matthew, before you go, I want to just jump in real quickly to say that we also have some established relationships on subcommittees already. So Paula attending Rural Resilience and Adaptation, and Claire attending Science and Data. So I historically have attended the Ag and Ecosystem, though not recently because they haven't met for quite some time since the plan was last drafted and finalized. So I think that's another component is we already have some relationships, and I think everyone should feel free to kind of speak up to the pieces and components that they're already established with, even if you're not in a formal liaison role or whatever your relationship is to Just Transition Subcommittee. I think there's a real openness to kind of take advantage of and utilize those partnerships that are already on you. So, but yeah, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, just to let everybody know, I'm already a part of, networking with others across the 3 that you say, the rural resilience, agriculture, and cross mitigation. I'm already involved in that, so you can just, so no need to be in that. But Science and Data and the last one that you mentioned, I would like to be involved in, because I'm working with that across, like I said, 12 to 11 other subcommittees. I'm banging them out one by one, so I don't want to, like you said, reinvent the wheel here at this point. Like I said, and I said, since Sophia, I don't mind working with, with others, like union reps too as well, because that's a new, field for me to be in. But I've done, like I said, the cross sector mitigation, agriculture, and resilience with other networks, like I said, already involved in that type of work. So one thing, the 2 that I have not been involved in, or the 3 that I have not been involved in, but 2, Science and Data, and the last one, because even if that last one's not paid, I'm already doing most of this work across the state. Like I said, I'm working with 11 other subcommittees across the state that do this exact type of work. So I really don't want to reinvent the wheel here at this point. I want to be placed in new or, places where, need the extra help or insight in. So Science and Data, and the last one, that's, very, very short notice, so I can represent those 2 remaining areas of the Vermont, ecosystem network, which I'm already a part of. So I have everything else, but except for those 2. So everything here that I'm already involved with. Just let you know. Thank you.
And Sophie,
Great.
did you guys cover kind of the per diem piece for attendance at other subcommittees in the onboarding orientation?
Yeah.
Okay.
And these will, thanks for mentioning that, Abby. So you all might remember from the onboarding that in general, when you attend subcommittee meetings of other subcommittees that are not transitions, that is not eligible for per diem. But when you're an official liaison, then you are eligible. So these liaison roles are like a more official capacity. So if you are the official liaison between, for example, Just Transitions and Science and Data, that is eligible for the per diem. And yeah, I think Paula or Kelly were really clear at the council level, like this really needs to be the case in order for it to be practical for people to play this role. So if you're a liaison, you are eligible for per diem at the subcommittee of which you are a liaison. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate that Sophie shared that does not pertain to this new tech advisory committee because that's not an official subcommittee, but that would be the case for the other four. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so any kind of quick reactions or Paula or Claire or others that have participated in one of the other subcommittees want to offer any thoughts? I think Anna asked in the chat, I'm just sort of not seeing the chat again, like is going to the calendar the best place to go to look for the timing of the meeting? So my understanding is that Just Transition Subcommittee is the only subcommittee that meets in these after hour times. We've talked about this previously, that other subcommittees have historically met during like the workday, which for some people is helpful and for others is not helpful if they're trying to take time away from their employment to be able to participate. So is that calendar, is that the place to go? I haven't used it enough recently myself.
And so I was like simultaneously writing that my personal opinion is that if somebody's interested in being a liaison for another subcommittee that meets at a time that doesn't work for you, that it would be appropriate to ask them to consider finding a time that works for everybody. Like we're going to do that for this subcommittee. We're going to do a little like scheduling poll because we do have one member who can only make every other meeting. So just again, in terms of that equity of access, if you're interested in a subcommittee, but you see it meets at 9 a.m. to work, then still let me know that you're interested, and I can ask them about doing a scheduling poll.
Great, I think that's a good suggestion. So I'm seeing interest from Sam in both cross-sector mitigation, and we'll look into the tech advisory committee. From Matthew shared his interest in science and data in the new advisory committee, and then Kelsey in rural resilience and adaptation. More than anything, I'm maybe just trying to help you also, Sophie, work through the chat here. Yeah, Danielle, and then Sam.
Can you remind me what time frame you're looking for the liaisons to like be most actively engaged with these subcommittees?
Yeah, my understanding is it would be that time period that Paula described that's most critical within the work of the subcommittees where they're looking at recommendations, determining key gaps, which is summer of 2024. And I don't remember, Paula.
May to August is
May to
the,
August.
yeah.
Thank you.
And then there's also like the it's really like May to December because the prioritization process will also require some like constant poking about equity, I think.
So yeah, I appreciate what you said, Sophie, about possibly changing meeting times to be more accommodating. I'm personally interested in the rural resilience subcommittee if you're looking for more than one liaison in each. Summer, I could make regular meetings, but not during the school year.
And I
So-
think that's the idea, Danielle, of like having more than one allows us to have that flexibility of
Yeah.
not being able to attend every single meeting, especially if it's, you know, life related, work schedule related. But I do also appreciate Sophie's suggestion of, you know, if there is a meeting scheduled continuously at a time that doesn't work, to reach out and see if they're willing to be flexible. Sam. Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks. I guess I really like this idea and I understand, but I get also being new and I know there's a lot of other folks that are new. I feel like I know we're going to spend the next meeting on the guiding principles, but I also wonder if we could make like, maybe this is too specific and please just tell me if this is way off base, but I was thinking that having like a best practices list for, this won't work for everything, but if we could begin building one as we're hearing things in the meetings, like that we're liaising in and or in the rest of our lives, either work or, you know, personal or whatever, those two are rarely split, but more power to you if you can. But like a list of best practices that might be useful for us all to keep in mind, because like this is where the group, this is where we have different voices here. Like on my own, I'm not as going to be as impactful or as insightful as the whole group together. And so maybe just keeping that list together, whether it's just like a shared doc. I know it's tricky with the public meeting law and stuff with the shared documents, but if we can find a way to have a living document where we're adding best practices, or maybe we're carving out just like a half an hour for us to touch base as a group about, hey, I had a question about this, wanted to put it up to the rest of you, or hey, you know, I keep hearing that the financial mechanisms for all of these strategies in this one place are all going to be incentives, rebates, and loans, and that doesn't work for people. Like, can we suggest writ large that we do like, you know, upfront cost coverage, sliding scales, or, you know, revolving funds or whatever? Like, I feel like there are some of those that could be useful that we could have as a group to give to the rest of the communities as just like a starting point of like, for anything you're thinking of that has a financial reimbursement mechanism, like this doesn't work. Like, let's move to this model. I don't know. Can we do some of those? Maybe we only end up with like 5 or 6, or maybe we have 100, but I think that would be helpful to have that space. And also that would be really maybe useful for the other committees too. I don't know, putting it out there.
Thank you for that suggestion, Sam. I think the public meeting law is something we have to work around, but I believe we can find a way.
And I am also like not an expert on public meeting law, but I think the important thing about public meeting law is that decisions cannot be made. But if there's not a quorum, but if there was kind of like an optional meeting where it wasn't so important to have quorum, where people could show up if they did want to have those discussions and knowledge sharing, and it was really around knowledge sharing and learning from each other, but decisions weren't being made, then I think without quorum that those conversations can still happen. Abby, can you, does what I'm saying sound, great?
Yeah.
I'm getting thumbs up from Paula.
I always look to Claire for this one, to be honest.
I think it's just that we could have informal office hours that just wouldn't exceed quorum. Like it would be like a task group effectively, as long as there was less than the simple majority. And I also think, to Sam's point, which I think is a great idea, if there was like 1 or 2 people who were like points on collating information, like we could all send information to 1 or 2 specific people who could keep a list updated that maybe is like gets shared collectively to the email list, or as a read-only like document that is accessible but not being edited in real time. I'm not a lawyer, but I do, so don't like legally quote me on that, but I think that's fine. We've definitely done like surveys and everyone edit a document and send it to one person, and that's been fine in the past. And I would just circle back. I think that list, Sam, if we did something like that, would also be a great place to like highlight existing public engagement efforts that have done so. As people are like engaging in other subcommittees, they could like reference that list of like, we'll work on that's already been done, and these were like the 3 priorities that came out of it, or this person's doing engagement on that. So make sure to, yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Great. I think we're seeing some interest and I think opportunity to continue to follow up with Sophie around interest in attending other subcommittee meetings. Sophie, what would be, and then I want to jump to just the co-chair piece before we wrap up for the night, and what's coming next. What would be the first step if you were newly interested in joining a subcommittee as the liaison, formal liaison? After we share the names with you or share the interest with you, is there like a formal introduction that happens? Or do we each just like reach out to the chairs? What's the next step, just out of curiosity?
I'm guessing that I'm probably going to send an email making those introductions, and that I will need to clarify if we're trying to get the liaisons like in the May or June meeting. I don't think there's a hard rule around it, so it can be flexible depending on both your schedule and perhaps the subcommittee. I think once we have these liaisons confirmed and established, like the sooner the better, so that like you as a new liaison can just start to get a feel for the meeting and understand what's going on. So yes, I will be in touch. I will probably make those introductions. I'll confirm to everybody also, like within Just Transitions, like, okay, here's who we've got as liaisons, so you all are in the know. And yeah, it looks like we've got a ton of great interest, and I'm also going to circle back with folks who weren't able to be here today and make sure that they have a chance to raise their hand for this and the other opportunities that we've talked about today.
Great. Thank you. So again, I'm hearing that this is like not so immediate that people need to be like putting other subcommittee meetings on their calendar, but like sometime in the next few months, it may make sense to attend a meeting, acknowledging that May and June Just Transition will continue to meet as part of our coalescing and relationship building. So, you know, sometime in that same time frame, or at least no later than July, when July and August will be not monthly Just Transition meetings, a great time to be thinking about your liaison role. Okay, so I wanted to just, one of the next to final kind of agenda topics was talking about co-chair support. So both Kelly Klein, so Kelly couldn't be here this evening. Typically we have two of us sort of co-facilitating along with our great staff support and other subcommittee members in attendance. And Kelly couldn't make this evening. And at our last planning meeting, which we always have the week prior to a Just Transition subcommittee meeting where we talk about the agenda and organize roles to get ready for the next meeting. Maybe I have to just speak for myself. I sort of like had a moment where I was like, I don't know that I can still play this role. Just sort of feeling really overwhelmed in my work. And when I'm not able to have a kind of like a co-chair to assist with the logistics and the facilitation, really just feeling overwhelmed in the responsibility as a sole present chair. And Kelly has expressed in the past as well that she is feeling like her work in life is sort of pulling her in a different direction and not feeling like she has capacity to function as chair or co-chair of the subcommittee. And so I think Kelly and I are both feeling this like tension and push of kind of and pull from other priorities. And yet co-chairing the subcommittee, especially at this time, feels like a really important time. And so I think neither one of us want to really shirk on responsibilities. And I think that's where a lot of the tension comes. Additionally, the structure for co-chair of subcommittees has to follow a certain kind of cadence. So one co-chair member needs to be a legislatively appointed member of the Vermont Climate Council, and one co-chair needs to be a member of the administration or their designee. So Kelly has played that Climate Council rep, and I am my secretary, Ensign Tebbets, from the Agency of Agriculture's representative and designee. So there are certain members of the subcommittee currently that could step in if they had capacity and interest to kind of replace Kelly and I as co-chairs. That's one kind of scenario. Another scenario is we could add additional co-chairs that could help kind of like feather the responsibility and share the load. Those additional co-chairs don't need to meet the criteria of being a counselor or an administrative designee. And or we could talk about kind of like a plan for kind of an opportunity for Kelly and I to step away. So like if there's an opportunity for someone, an interest by someone to step in, but it's going to take them 2, 3 months, 4 months to kind of step into that responsibility based upon their workload and other responsibilities. I think Kelly and I are both interested in that as well, but both just feeling that we're at this place in our workload and the real critical nature of this subcommittee right now, that we don't want to fail this work or fail the collective subcommittee, and really I think looking for some support and some assistance. And some of you we've talked with already, and some of you are, really honestly considering it and looking at checking with your organizations and looking at your capacity to consider it. So I know it's not a simple ask. So I'm not looking for an answer this evening necessarily, but really just wanting to be very transparent about the fact that I don't think Kelly and I can do this for much longer without some additional support. So Paula, I see your hand up, and then I see yours too, Matthew. Hang on one second. Yeah, Paula.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, yeah, I'm one of the people who was contacted because I'm one of 2 other members aside from Kelly of the Climate Council who would be eligible to be one of the required co-chairs. And I know like the other Climate Council member is just like, can't do it. I'm definitely willing to be part of this. It may, like, I'd feel more comfortable with it if we had like 3 people. But also, I might also just be able to prioritize this and kind of step away from rural resilience, especially if other people are wanting to be liaisons on that committee. So, it's like an open question, but I just want to say, like, I'm willing to be in that spot.
Thank you, Paula. Matthew, I saw the human
Yes.
hand.
And thanks for bringing that question up to the floor. Yes, I think we should add more co-chairs and be a lot. What I see across Vermont in my work is there's too many responsibilities on one person, and there's a lot of burnout across on one person. Believe me, in my organizations, I have problems, filling them out. Where clearly, Environmental Justice Network itself, we don't even have a manager there yet, and we're paying a lot of money to get one. But like I said, there's a lot of burnout if you're doing it yourself. It's like you're overtaxed, you're overtired. Including this, I'm on 11 other committees across the state, and I should be, done. I just sit there and say no. But if I, like you said, if I quit now, then the fulfillment of what I want to see across Vermont will never happen. And I do think we should add more co-chairs, so we don't have this stipulation or guidance say it has to be by elected administrator or elected by a legislator, because that just makes the work for us even more tasking, but also makes it even more hard, because there's people out there that may want to do this work, and we are eliminating that possibility or opportunity if we just leave it up to administration or legislative guidelines, because like I said, that just makes it worse for us, it makes it less efficient for us if we keep that same system in place. And I'm seeing this across Vermont as a whole, statewide, and I'm seeing it play out currently right now, that you leave it to the few, the most powerful, then you're going to get what you deserve. And this is not Vermont. This is not the way I would suggest, putting these committees or organizations this way. I wouldn't run it this way either. I wouldn't even recommend running it this way, because that's just putting a lot of pressure on you just to get the job done. And I do think, moving forward, if you open it up to having co-chairs across, this organization, it'll run much smoother and be more efficient together as one unit with unity at heart. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I agree. We do task busy people to take on more responsibilities, and I think probably this entire subcommittee is comprised of busy people who get asked and tapped very frequently for a variety of roles. I want to just share a couple of quick details about what the subcommittee chair role might look like for those that may be curious. Just a few, just really quickly. So as I mentioned, we do meet once a month prior to the board meeting to set the agenda, to post and work with Sophie to post meeting minutes, and then send an email to all of you that you've typically received from me that includes resources and materials and meeting information. I think there are opportunities sometimes where we get asked to consult with the Climate Action Office or with the Climate Council on different topics as representative of the subcommittee. And then I think all the other same roles and responsibilities of engaging in public engagement, sharing lived experience, shared learnings from the public, assisting with just transition, guiding principles, and scoring rubric, kind of all the same responsibilities that we all have as entirety of the subcommittee representatives. So it's really more of an administrative responsibility, and that time sort of being a rep to kind of like the larger statewide council steering committee. I can't say how many hours it takes. I think it's more just it's not necessarily a ton of hours. It's more just creating the space for the big picture of like, where are we moving next? What are our next topics? Following up on some of the details that get discussed in this meeting to make sure that we're moving them forward to either bring in guest speakers or kind of keep a flow to our conversations so that it feels like we're utilizing everyone's time wisely when we do pull together for a full steering committee meeting. So that kind of gives you a sense of some of the roles and responsibilities as I have imagined them and experienced them. So I know we're almost at time. There was a great question that Paula asked. I think it was in a direct chat to me and also to Sophie, which is around if we are indeed going to stand up a kind of an advisory group that's going to work on providing some maybe recommendations to the steering committee. And there were a few of you that expressed interest, Paula, Claire, Sam, Carrie, and Sophie. Would we as a subcommittee be comfortable empowering that group to make recommendations and draft a letter to share with the subcommittee as opposed to those recommendations, or that letter coming back to this full subcommittee for approval? Just want to make sure, would this group in total feel comfortable with that empowerment to that subgroup, to that small team? Or any opposition to that concept? And we could even do it, Paula, where Kelly or I could share the letter, and if people had comments, they could share those comments back with one of us as opposed to back to the whole subcommittee, so that once we have a final document, if there were any edits or comments that people wanted to add, we could create that space, but not that we'd have to wait until the May meeting to approve it before it could be shared with the council.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful to just be able to kind of get feedback between meetings, and maybe even if people wanted to write to one of the co-chairs right now and just say, like, I want to have feedback on this, even if I can't be in the task group.
Yeah,
that'd be helpful. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Really last minute here. I think what's next is we will have our May meeting on the third Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. We recognize that our current meeting schedule is not necessarily working for every subcommittee member, so that's another thing that we'll talk about hopefully at the May meeting, is sort of meeting schedule. We didn't feel that we could fit that into tonight's agenda as well, but the May meeting would really be focused on a refresher around the guiding principles, so there'll be a homework assignment. One thing that Claire, you suggested, which we haven't talked through in great detail, but I think was a nice idea as you're reviewing the guiding principles and scoring rubric document as like your takeaway homework in advance of the May meeting. We could keep an interactive conversation. It may be to ask you to pick 2 principles that were outlined in the guiding principle that kind of spoke to you and sort of come to the May meeting and be prepared or be open to sharing them, talking about them as a way to kind of familiarize one another with the guiding principle. So really having that be the focus for May. For the June meeting would be public engagement focus. That's what we're hoping that our CBI consultant team will be able to join us. We'll have also seen their most recent quarterly updates. So we'll be really kind of imbued in public engagement, maybe even have attended a few other subcommittee meetings by then. July and August would be kind of like summer holiday time for the Just Transition Subcommittee meeting. Hopefully you're attending if interested, other subcommittee as a liaison. And then thinking about re-engaging in the fall at some point, whether that's September, October as a Just Transition Subcommittee, and really evaluating whether that is going to be a monthly meeting or less frequent given the liaison roles and other activities around the action plan that are underway. So I do think we intend to send out a survey to try to get a sense of people's availability and day of the week and month and time of day. Again, we've done this a couple of times as a subcommittee, but we have so many new members that it feels appropriate to do that again. All right. Anything else that folks want to offer for the evening wrap up?
I was just going to really quickly suggest there was and maybe the moment that the guiding principles and that rubric in particular clicked in place for me was actually in one of the climate caucus meetings, like maybe over a year ago, when folks actually attempted to apply it to the T-bill, the transportation bill. And it was just like interesting to watch them go through that process. And then that's when I was like, oh, like, how do I use this? And even if it's, you know, we end up not using it or changing it or using it or whatever. I don't know if that video would be helpful for folks. I was trying to find it, but if anyone knows what I'm talking about and knows where it is, or if that would be useful for you, I'm happy to find it. Cause sometimes I think reading it and you're like, okay, but then seeing people talk about it and actually use it could be helpful. So
you're thinking of a recording of that conversation.
Yes.
Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, there it exists. I know it does. And I can try to find it, but if anyone knows what I'm talking about and you want to also try, it doesn't hurt if it's multiple.
Yeah, and if we pull together some resources like that, I'm happy to send that out in the next kind of prep for the May meeting, some recordings to watch. Okay, Matthew, I'm going to ask you to be brief, but yes, happy to hear from you.
Yeah, it's just the name, you know, that's that put in the chat. It's just maybe you put maybe a new terminology of scoring metric might work better. I mean, it's just for me in general, you know, someone says scoring rubrics. It just you lost me at that. So if you put like the word scoring metrics, which most do have a scoring metrics, most people use that name more often, you know, it gets the gist of what they're looking when they're doing scoring, you know. So the word scoring metrics would definitely be a good suggestion to replace scoring rubrics, because I do not to this day I really that just scoring metrics would be more understandable. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Yeah, well, let's talk about kind of how to make sure that resources that we're asking other subcommittees to use is digestible and accessible. All right. Have a great evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. Thanks to our new members to joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.